Have you ever noticed how exhausting it is to chase divinity like it's somewhere else, like you have to earn it, like there's a mountain to climb or a ritual to complete just to be close to something you were never separate from? We're taught to reach, to strive, to pray up into the sky, to chase signs, to seek approval from some invisible place that always feels just one step out of reach. And underneath that seeking is a trembling, a nervous system caught in the frequency of lack. A subtle signal saying, I don't yet have it, I'm not quite there, something's still missing. And every time we believe that sacredness lives out there, in someone else's words, someone else's blessing, someone else's idea of perfection, we disconnect from the truth that creation is not given. It's remembered. You don't manifest what you want. You manifest what you are, not with force, but with frequency. When you keep seeking God outside yourself, you unknowingly delay the collapse of the timeline that holds your desire, because you're still in the vibration of waiting, not receiving, of effort, not embodiment. And this is not about blame, it's about attunement. I used to think that if I just got better, more spiritual, more healed, more worthy, then life would finally open. I'd finally be trusted with the good stuff, the aligned partner, the right moment, the abundance that doesn't vanish. But what I didn't know was that I was leaking my power every time I waited for the divine to come to me, instead of remembering it was already living as me. We pray from our knees, but then walk through life like beggars, forgetting that every breath is a communion, every thought is a signal, every emotional state is either a contraction or a conductor. Creation doesn't begin with belief, it begins with being, with nervous system coherence, with the quiet knowing that I am is enough to open every door, not someday, not when you're perfect, but now. And yet, the seeking persists, doesn't it? Because the mind loves movement. The chase is familiar. It gives us something to do, something to fix, which makes us feel like we're getting closer. But presence is stillness. Power is silence. And true divinity doesn't shout from the clouds. It whispers from within. What if the reason things haven't landed yet is not because you're doing it wrong, but because you're still gripping too tightly to the idea that God is somewhere else, that the answer lives in a sign, a signal, a specific timing, instead of inside your own body? What if the breakthrough isn't about finding more, but softening into what's already here? You've never been separate from Source. You've only been tuned to the frequency of separation. And that frequency, that state of subtle fear and waiting, it fragments your field. It disorients your magnetism. It scrambles your signal, so the universe reflects confusion instead of clarity. This is why you can do all the right things and still feel like nothing's moving, because frequency doesn't lie, and your embodiment, your actual lived state, is the blueprint, not your words, not your wishes, your state. So if the outer world still looks like delay, ask yourself, what am I still waiting for permission to be? Where am I outsourcing what can only be felt inside? Because as long as God is out there, you will never feel safe here. And when you don't feel safe, your energy contracts. And when you contract, creation halts, not as punishment, but because the quantum field only responds to coherence. And coherence doesn't come from control, it comes from coming home. I used to think surrender meant giving up, letting go of desire, abandoning the dream. But now I see surrender is not the absence of wanting, it's the presence of trust, it's the frequency of wholeness, the deep cellular knowing that nothing is missing, and therefore nothing needs to be chased. When you stop seeking God as if God is a stranger, you stop pushing your power into the future. You stop chasing the light and realize you are the light. And when your body begins to believe that, the whole field shifts. There is a subtle line between devotion and disempowerment, between honoring the mystery and handing away your voice. And most people live their lives unknowingly worshipping a version of God that keeps them small, that punishes, that withholds, that needs proving. So they hustle for worth, even in their spirituality. But the quantum doesn't respond to effort, it responds to essence. And the truth is, you don't need to earn your way into alignment. You return to it, you regulate into it, you remember it. Think of a flower. It doesn't strain to bloom. It doesn't negotiate with nature. It opens because it is the opening. That is the frequency of embodied divinity. That is what it means to become a living prayer, and not one who begs, but one who broadcasts. And here's where it gets real. When you're gripping for signs, constantly asking, is this the moment, is this the thing? What you're really saying underneath is, I still don't trust. And that frequency even when it's coated in rituals and affirmations, is still fear. It's still fragmentation. I know how seductive it is to seek signs, to pull cards, to read horoscopes, to scan the sky for symbols that it's working. And there's nothing wrong with magic, but the moment it becomes a substitute for inner alignment, you've moved out of creation and into dependence. You begin outsourcing your timeline to someone else's timing. You begin measuring your readiness based on synchronicities instead of embodiment. And worst of all, you miss the quiet moment that was trying to open inside you, the one that didn't come with flashing lights, but with a calm exhale, the moment that felt like peace, like relief, like home. Because that's how God speaks. Not always through fire and thunder, but through the absence of urgency, through the clarity that needs no proof, through the stillness that doesn't need to become, because it already is. You don't need to chase signs when you are the sign. You don't need to beg for alignment when your nervous system is already humming in coherence. You don't need to convince the universe to choose you when you've already chosen yourself. The seeking ends the moment you realize that divinity isn't something to touch, it's something to transmit. And the more you broadcast the frequency of wholeness, the more life mirrors back opportunities that match it. Not because you forced it, because you remembered how to feel it, because you stopped looking up and finally looked in. And in that stillness, where the mind relaxes and the breath deepens, you'll notice something strange. The very thing you were chasing begins chasing you. There is a moment, quiet but unmistakable, when the body shifts from seeking to knowing. It doesn't come with a trumpet. It doesn't ask for attention. It just settles, like dust in a sunbeam, like a truth returning to the place it was always meant to live. That moment is when you become magnetic, because all magnetism begins with safety. Not safety in the external world, not safety in other people's behavior, but a visceral internal permission to be exactly who and where you are, without trying to earn the next moment. This is what most people miss. They think manifestation is about vision boards and scripting and high vibes, when really, it's about nervous system safety, coherence, the kind of soft, stable presence that tells the universe, I'm ready now, not because I need this to complete me, but because I've already completed the cycle of fear within me. That is the signal the quantum responds to, the absence of force, the presence of frequency. And frequency doesn't lie. You could be reciting affirmations all day, but if your body still trembles with doubt, if your stomach knots when you think about time, if your chest tightens when you imagine receiving, then that is the signal being sent. This isn't punishment, it's precision. The quantum field is a mirror, not a judge. It doesn't give you what you deserve, it gives you what you are. So what are you broadcasting? When no one is watching, what are you emanating as in the space between thoughts? This is where we return to embodiment, because embodiment isn't just a concept, it's a vibration. It's how you walk before the breakthrough, how you breathe when there's no evidence yet, how you hold your heart in the waiting room of your life without collapsing into fear. Most people hold their breath between signs. They wait for proof before they exhale. But the universe responds to the exhale itself, because it means you trust. It means your body has entered the timeline where it's already done. This is how timelines collapse. Not through hustle, through harmony. And harmony comes when you stop trying to manage the process and start remembering the truth. You are not becoming the creator. You are realizing you've always been it. The same force that births galaxies lives in your chest. The same intelligence that tells flowers when to open is pulsing in your fingertips. So why would you need to seek anything outside yourself when the source code is already within? You've just been tuned to someone else's frequency, someone else's idea of divinity. But you can tune back right now, not with effort, but with stillness. Try it. Feel your breath. Feel your body in space. Feel the subtle hum beneath the noise. The one that says, I'm here. That hum is not your imagination. It's your original signal. And every time you choose to stay with it, instead of reaching, instead of reacting, instead of scrambling for confirmation, you come into coherence. And coherence is the doorway to all things. Not someday. Not when you've figured it all out, but now, because the field is always listening, not to your words, but to your wavelength. It took me a long time to realize that my urgency was blocking the very thing I was calling in. That every time I rushed toward an outcome, I was actually rushing away from alignment. Because urgency isn't clarity, it's fear in disguise. It's the nervous system gripping for control, trying to bend the quantum field with willpower instead of resonance. And here's the paradox. The more you try to make it happen, the less space you give it to arrive. Because manifestation doesn't respond to pressure. It responds to presence. Not the frantic kind of presence, not, I'll be calm if I get the thing, but the true presence that says, even if it never comes, I am whole, I am still. That is the most magnetic place you can be, because in that moment, you've stopped needing reality to validate you. You've stopped needing signs to prove you're on the right path. You've stopped outsourcing your worth to outcomes, and when that happens, the whole field shifts. Not because you forced it, because you stopped interfering with it. Interference from that subtle energetic static we send out when we don't trust, when we obsess over timing, when we think we need to do more, heal more, prove more, is the very thing that scrambles the signal. It fragments the field. It delays the alignment, not because you're unworthy, but because you're out of tune with what you already are. You don't manifest from the part of you that wants. You manifest from the part of you that knows. That quiet, steady center that says, it is already done, and not just as a mantra, but as a physiological experience, a shift in breath, a loosening in the chest, a stillness in the mind that doesn't need the next thing to begin living now. This is embodiment. It's not pretending to feel safe, it's becoming safe in your own frequency. And you can't fake that. You can't bypass your nervous system. You can't layer affirmations over dysregulation and expect coherence. The field picks up the totality of your signal, not just your words, but your breath, your posture, your inner tone. This is why control never works. Because control is always a response to fear. And fear, even masked as spiritual striving, is still an incoherent vibration. When you believe God is outside you, you automatically begin to grasp. You place your power in signs, in people, in predictions. And every time you do that, you weaken the signal of your own essence. But when you return to yourself, when you become the place where divinity lands, something miraculous happens. You stop begging for the thing, and you start becoming the frequency that already has it. You shift from, where is it, to, it's on its way. From, what more do I need to do, to, who am I being as I wait. From, will it happen, to, I trust the version of me it's already happening for. This shift isn't mental, it's vibrational, and the field always knows the difference. I remember the moment I truly understood what it meant to be the creator of my reality. It wasn't during a high-energy manifestation workshop. It wasn't when something miraculous appeared in my life. It was in the quiet, in the aching stillness, in the moment where I felt absolutely alone, and yet undeniably full. It was when I stopped reaching and started receiving. Not receiving the outcome, receiving myself, the self that I had abandoned every time I doubted the timing, every time I made my worth dependent on external movement, every time I believed that divinity was a reward for effort instead of the default state of my being. I used to think God was an external authority, someone or something that would grant my desires if I could just prove my readiness. So I tried to earn it. I tried to micromanage every step. I studied all the tools. I asked for all the signs. But underneath it all, I was still vibrating in the frequency of separation. And then I realized, every time I seek God as other, I send the signal, I am not it. And if I'm not it, then how could I ever create from it? You don't create from distance, you create from union, from coherence between heart and mind, between thought and body, between breath and belief. This is why embodiment is everything, because the version of you that has it, whatever it is, doesn't just think differently. They feel differently. They move differently. They hold their energy in a completely different way. They're not waiting for a message. They are the message. They're not checking for proof. They are living in the reality where proof isn't even needed, because it's already done. This is the frequency of the fulfilled timeline. And when you start to embody that state now, not later, not when the thing arrives, you collapse the gap between you and it. You begin to merge with the version of yourself who already knows. And here's the key. You don't do this with the mind. You do it with the body. The body is the instrument, the tuning fork, the portal. When you bring your breath into coherence, when you drop your awareness into your heart, when you feel what it would feel like to be in the already done, you broadcast a new signal into the field. And the field, precise, responsive, intelligent, mirrors it back. Not because you convinced it, because you matched it. This is quantum manifestation, not effort. Essence, not logic, vibration, not more doing, more being. And it begins the moment you stop looking out there and start listening in here, to the quiet guidance beneath the noise, to the still pulse of truth that doesn't beg, doesn't grasp, doesn't chase. It simply is. And so are you, already worthy, already magnetic, already aligned. The only thing missing was your remembrance. We are taught to wait for evidence before we believe, to see it first, then feel it. But the quantum doesn't work that way. It reverses the order. It waits for your vibration before it reflects the result. This is why so many people feel stuck. They keep scanning reality for confirmation, instead of becoming the confirmation. They ask, why isn't it happening yet? But what they're really saying is, I still don't feel it's mine. And the field listens not to your timeline, but to your tone. If you say the right words but carry the vibration of doubt, what the universe receives is the doubt. If you visualize your dream life while holding the breath of tension, what gets mirrored back is that tension. This is the physics of frequency. This is the quiet law beneath all manifestation. And it's not meant to be harsh, it's meant to be liberating. Because once you realize you don't have to wait for anyone to choose you, give to you, or open the door for you, you reclaim the only thing that ever created anything, your own alignment. But here's where it gets real. Alignment isn't a mood. It's not a spiritual performance. It's not pretending to be high vibe while suppressing your fear. It's a physiological state of coherence, where your body and mind are not fighting each other, but flowing in harmony. That's when you become a clear channel, not clouded by urgency, not fractured by doubt, not distorted by control. And in that clarity, the field can finally deliver what it's been trying to send you all along, not just the thing, but the you who can hold it. Because if your nervous system can't hold the frequency of having, it will subconsciously push it away, not because you're broken, because you're still vibrating in the energy of not yet. You must become the one who receives before the receiving. You must inhabit the state of already done, not in fantasy, but in embodiment. Feel what it would feel like if it had already arrived. The ease in your shoulders, the softness in your chest, the absence of effort, the presence of peace. Let that feeling be your practice. Let that feeling be your prayer, because that feeling is the frequency, and that frequency is what creates, not the rituals, not the striving, not the desperate asking, but the choice, moment by moment, to become the version of you who no longer needs to seek, because they've already remembered. They are not separate from the source. They are the source, in form, and so are you. Every breath, every thought, every quiet return to center is a moment of manifestation in motion. There is a version of you, already real in the quantum, who doesn't check the clock, who doesn't refresh the feed, who doesn't ask, is it working every few hours? That version of you knows, not as an idea, but as a felt reality, a resonance in the bones, a steady pulse of inner trust that doesn't flinch when the outside world goes quiet, because the outside world is never the source. It's only the reflection. And when you deeply grasp this, not just intellectually, but somatically, you begin to relax. And in that relaxation, you become radically magnetic. It's the opposite of how we're taught to create. We're conditioned to strive, to grip, to perform for the outcome. But in the quantum, the opposite is true. The tighter the grip, the weaker the signal. The more you try to control the timeline, the more you stretch it. Why? Because control is a frequency of fear, and fear cannot hold the vibration of fulfillment. The universe isn't testing you. It's responding to your tone, your timing, your embodiment. It's reading the subtext of your state, the messages you send through breath, through posture, through energy. You say, I'm ready, but your body is still bracing. You say, I trust, but your nervous system is still in fight or flight. You say, I'm open, but you're secretly gripping for signs. And this isn't wrong, it's just incoherent, and coherence is the portal. Coherence means the head, the heart, and the body are in agreement, not pushing, not pretending, but aligned. And in that alignment, the field responds fast. Not because you've earned it, because you've matched it. So how do you become coherent? You stop asking when, you stop seeking signs, you stop needing the future to validate the now, and instead, you begin living as if it's already done. Not in fantasy, in physiology. You breathe slower, you move gentler, you walk like someone who already knows. And it's not about ignoring contrast. Life will still test your steadiness. You'll still feel moments of doubt, of grasping, of contraction. But now you know what to do when that happens. You come home, to breathe, to body, to now, and every time you do, you send a new signal, not from force, but from frequency, not to get the thing, but to become the version of you who no longer needs to chase it. Because in that stillness, in that surrendered embodiment, it starts to chase you. The synchronicities align, the pieces fall into place. The invisible becomes visible, not because you found God out there, but because you remembered God was always here. It's strange, isn't it? How the moment you stop needing it, it arrives. How the moment you stop searching, the answers whisper themselves into your awareness. How the moment you stop proving your worth, life begins to mirror it. This isn't coincidence, this is coherence. This is the physics of remembrance. When you stop seeking God outside, you no longer create from lack. You no longer move from the vibration of absence. You no longer try to manifest from a version of you who doesn't believe they're already it. You shift timelines, not because you finally did enough, but because you finally became enough in your own eyes. You collapse distance, not by speeding things up, but by standing still fully in the frequency of already. And this is the truth I want you to carry with you. Nothing you desire is outside of you. It was never held hostage in the future. It was never locked away behind someone else's opinion or some perfect divine timing. It has always been encoded in your field, waiting for you to clear the noise, to drop the grasp, to stop begging reality to believe in you, and instead to become the one who already believes, the one who breathes like it's safe now, who walks like it's unfolding now, who lives like they've already arrived, because that's when the field shifts. That's when doors open. That's when everything accelerates, not from the push of the mind, but from the pull of your frequency, not from trying, from tuning. So if you've been chasing signs, if you've been waiting for a moment to prove you're on track, if you've been reaching and still feel like it's just out of reach, this is your invitation to stop searching the sky for what's already pulsing in your chest, to stop doubting your worth based on what hasn't yet appeared, to stop outsourcing God and start remembering the divine is not coming, it's expressing through you right now. The flowers don't beg for bloom, the sun doesn't wonder if it's enough, and your soul, your essence, your signature frequency doesn't need to try harder to be magnetic. It just needs to be remembered. And when you remember, when you soften into the stillness beneath the seeking, when your breath becomes your sanctuary and your body becomes your temple, you begin to radiate the kind of power that needs no introduction, no proof, no sign, because you've become the signal not separate from God, but the place where God takes form.